Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, Iraq loses count of civilian casualties in the war, and reporters try to come up with the numbers. The Fixer's story, an inside look at news reporting in Palestine. And The Onion, peeling back the layers of television news.
It may have been gunshots.
A coup today in Haiti, of course.
Or firecrackers.
Welcome back to The Listening Post. The latest casualty of the war in Iraq are the casualty figures. The government in Baghdad has decided it will no longer supply the United Nations with counts of civilians killed in the fighting. So news reports will include the number of American and coalition forces killed. But the UN will have no official way of knowing how many civilians have died. That's our starting point this week, the decision by the Iraqi authorities to stop providing that information, the efforts of the media to get it, and the reasons why it matters. Datelines and civilian death tolls from Iraq for Tuesday, May 8th. 25 bodies discovered in Baghdad, 7 in Amil, 3 in Dura, 2 in Gaza, 2 in Jihad. Civilians killed also in Sadr City, Suleikh, Kahira, Wazariya, and Philistine. Those are the ones that were reported, the ones we know about. What we are lacking is the overall picture. The Iraqi government says it stopped publishing civilian casualty figures because it wants to revamp the way it gathers that information, that its old methods were flawed, and that the media were misusing the figures, politicizing them.
To have these figures come out is actually the only tangible measure of success or failure of the security plan. Also, these figures have a huge impact on the Iraqi people. There's entire neighborhoods in Baghdad that are completely deserted, and the more the Iraqi people know about these figures, the more people want to leave. And these figures are supposed to be kept secret, but unfortunately, for the government actually, they come out and everybody knows about, and certain attacks are way too big and way too bold really for the government to try to hide them.
Like what happened on April 18th. Multiple bombings across Baghdad. A market, a checkpoint, a hospital. Up to 200 killed, another dreadful snapshot within an incomplete picture. The Los Angeles Times has attempted to fill the data void through anonymous government and medical sources. The Times calculated that more than 5,500 Iraqis died in the first 3 months of this year, but concedes that figure might well be low. And there are private initiatives. The Iraq Body Count Project is the work of academics and activists from the US and UK. It relies on a variety of sources to compile its figures, an imperfect science, it concedes, but a necessary exercise.
One of the really important reasons for publishing these figures is because it recognizes and honors the price that some people have paid. To not even have your death acknowledged is an enormously inflaming act. So in a sense, publishing and acknowledging is one way of ameliorating some of the terrible effects of this conflict. But the other is, we need to know the deaths to know how the conflict is going. And the sad fact is that year on year, the number of civilian deaths has risen since the invasion. Things are not getting better, they're getting worse. And that is really information which the whole world needs to know.
But ultimately, in a country where reporters are not free to travel without danger and unable to tell the stories that need to be told, the casualty figures become the measure of whether the surges and security crackdowns are working.
It may be that everybody in the green zone, Iraqi, American, British, is saying that things are getting better, the surge is having some success. But Iraqis, ordinary Iraqis in the street, they really know what's happening. So if one has figures which show that things are getting better, but the reality is they're getting worse, it means that the outside world, the Iraqi government, have a distorted vision of what is happening. And if they take the policy decisions on that basis, we'll be in even worse mess than we are at this moment.
George Bush is trying to sell his surge and success, but also the Iraqi government needs to tell the Iraqi people that it's also having some sort of success on the ground. And what you see right now on Iraqi TV is incredible media campaign and very sophisticated advertising campaign promoting the security forces, promoting the security plan. You have every night a spokesman for the security plan giving these incredible figures of success, how many people they arrested, how many bodies less were found around the city. casualties, etc. So really it is a very careful, orchestrated media campaign to have the Iraqi people back the security plan.
The media will continue their struggle to find the figures that add up to a picture of what is happening in Iraq. But not all of the blame for the absence of numbers is being placed on Baghdad.
It's very important to acknowledge the fact that the Iraqi government has been the sole government to provide any public data about civilian casualties at all, and it's done this in very difficult circumstances. We do regret the fact that they're not publishing it now and would hope that they would start again. But we would want to say that it is not only the Iraqi government that has that responsibility. The US government and the UK government also have responsibilities which to date they have not fulfilled.
Here's what our Global Village Voices have to say on Iraq and the casualty figures.
The broader issue here is not the number of casualties or who's counting them. It's the fact that there are so many people dying in Iraq that nobody knows what's going on. Nobody can really keep track of how bad the situation has become in this country. And I think that speaks volumes about the U.S. invasion. That it has resulted not in spreading democracy in the Arab world, but in putting together a government that can't even tell its people how bad life is for them every day, and can't even give them the smallest dignity of publishing their deaths of their loved ones.
This news about the lack of information about body counts in Iraq is very disturbing to me. And while censoring body counts might seem like a good idea in the short term because it allows for more positive publicity or less negative publicity, in the long run it's not serving anyone's interests because it's just putting decision makers one step further away from the truth.
If you have a smart take on global media and the way they or we cover the world, then email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. We'll run you through the technology and add what you have to say to our Global Village Voices. There's a recurring theme to our Listening Post News Bites this week. It's about the freedom to report from Central Asia and the Middle East. Starting in Afghanistan and signs that the country's media are growing less independent and more susceptible to government control. The Afghan parliament is considering a new law that would make it a crime to criticize the state or even discuss the relationship between religion and the state. The rush to create free media after the fall of the Taliban led to the establishment of more than 500 publications, TV and radio stations in Afghanistan, but the market's been saturated, and with a shortage of donors, independent media are becoming an endangered species. Reporters in Egypt are still trying to figure out what to make of a statement from the head of the parliament that anti-terrorism legislation could be used against reporters for covering so-called terrorist organizations. The head of the Egyptian Journalist Syndicate says that could make reporters accomplices for simply doing their jobs and publishing news about banned groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, which, despite having the support of roughly 1/5 of the population, has been banned in Egypt since the 1950s. All homegrown drama programs on Iranian state-run TV this coming year will feature one common element: prayer scenes. An Iranian news agency reports that the directive comes from the head of state-run TV in Iran, Ayatollah Zarghami, who was appointed by the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Zarghami has reportedly said that prayer scenes should not be confined to positive and leading characters. In other words, the bad guys can pray too, but the drama programs that don't show characters praying will be denied airtime. We've never reported on airlines and their in-flight entertainment systems before, but there's an interesting story involving Virgin and an abrupt change of course. Last week, we learned Virgin was adding a new film to its menu, Loose Change, the 9/11 conspiracy film that made its name on the internet and that repeatedly shows planes hitting the Twin Towers. Airlines usually shy away from films showing plane crashes, and Virgin's main transatlantic route runs between London and New York. This week, Virgin quietly pulled Loose Change from its menu and told us the press release must have been sent in error. Loose Change can still be viewed on the net. Last year, it was #1 on Google's video download chart. Coming up after the break, taking you inside the way the news is reported from Gaza.